Welcome into another episode of Tailgate Talk SEC. I am Will Thomas, and today I want to talk about the Florida quarterback battle. Now, Aaron Philo won the job. All right, John Summerall announced earlier this week that Georgia Tech transfer Aaron Philo, who came over with his OC and Buster Faulkner, won the job over Tramell Jones, who did stick around in games when he was there last season, backed up DJ Lagway, played in a couple of games. And this was by far the most controversial quarterback decision that we had among all the SEC quarterback battles. Right, there was a group of people who really thought that Tramell Jones earned that job and sort of took the stance of, well, Philo came in and it was almost like a rigged competition, right? And that Philo was always going to be the starting quarterback. Posing this as a quarterback battle was unfair to Tramell Jones. I don't believe that that's true. There's a bunch of lies, maybe not lies, but non-truths being spread around this Florida quarterback battle that I kind of wanted to address today. So first of all, when Summerall and Faulkner brought Aaron Philo in to compete for that quarterback spot, they did not promise him the job, and they did not say this guy's going to be our quarterback. We'll present a quarterback battle to keep Tramell invested, make sure he stays with the program, but it'll be Philo's job. That's not what happened. What did probably happen is that they expected him to take the job. Right, I'm sure they brought him in, and they wouldn't have said it. They wouldn't have said it publicly. They probably said to each other. They said, "Yeah, this will probably be Philo's job, right?" Just because of the familiarity, knowing the ins and outs of Buster Faulkner's offense, which Tramell Jones just didn't know. And coming into spring, right, we saw that. Like, there was a big gap between Philo and Tramell in terms of understanding the offense and being able to move the ball downfield correctly. Now, Tramell closed that gap. Clearly, to his credit, Tramell Jones closed that gap. He's a really good quarterback. He learns really quickly, and he started to close that gap on Aaron Philo. But when it came down to it, Philo's structural advantage in Buster Faulkner's scheme seemed to outweigh that. And I have no problem telling you that the ceiling of Tramell Jones is higher than the ceiling of Aaron Philo, because I think that it is. Right, athletically, he has a little more of a dual threat ability to him. I think his arm is probably just pound for pound a little bit stronger. I'm not debating which quarterback has the better tools in the future and which one can be the more of a superstar quarterback. But that's not what this battle was about. The battle was about who can run the offense, because this year, obviously, everybody wants a stud at quarterback. Right? Everyone wants that elite generational guy, like you're seeing a Keelan Russell or a Faison Brandon, maybe being at Bama and Tennessee. Florida doesn't need that this year. And John Summerall, in his first year as head coach, doesn't need to try and make that happen. Right? It's his first year. He needs to show a proof of concept and growth. And in Florida's offense, you have Jaden Ball, one of the best running backs in the country, backed up by Duke, Clark, Lyndon Montgomery, Evan Pryor, a really good stable of runners. And that receiver room is dumb. I mean, Dallas Wilson, Vernell Brown III, Eric Singleton, Micah Mays, Bailey Stockton, Davian Gross is a true freshman. TJ Abrams is back there. There is so much skill talent on the Florida offense that the quarterback of the Gators, whether it was Aaron Philo, Tramell Jones, or just some other unknown person, there was never a need for them to be a transcendent talent. All they had to do was understand the ins and outs. Oh, sorry, I'm saying this past tense, but it's not. All they have to do is understand the ins and outs of Buster Faulkner's offense, know when to make the checks, know when to bail on a play, just be able to go through those progressions effectively and lean on the elite playmakers that the Gators have there on their offense to get it done. The quarterback's not going to have a bunch of playmaking pressure on them. It's just going to be execution pressure. So when it boils down to that, I mean, how do you not trust Aaron Philo more than Tramell Jones in a scheme that he's already been in? Right? In a scheme that Eric Singleton also has already been in as a receiver. That familiarity when it comes to how Florida's going to run their offense, it's not going to be hero ball with the quarterback. It's going to be, can you execute the offense correctly? It's going to be, can we trust you not to make mistakes? Right? Because think about Gunnar Stockton. He's probably a little more of a dual threat ability, a dual threat, than Aaron Philo is. But how many times does Gunnar Stockton blow you away with what he does individually? Versus how many times does he make the right play consistently and suddenly Georgia scored again? Right? Gunnar Stockton isn't a transcendent talent at the quarterback spot, but he does everything right. And I'm not saying that Philo is going to be what Gunnar Stockton is for Georgia this year for Florida, but it's the same theory, where you can just rely on your playmakers and go get it done that way, as opposed to having your quarterback needing to be the superstar of the offense. Now, the other thing that's worth noting, right? Florida's offensive line is a little bit in flux, and it's kind of a luxury for teams to have the same starting quarterback for all 12 games, because you never know when a sack just gets hit a little bit wrong, or on a scramble, you never know when he puts his shoulder down and just hits that throwing arm a little weird. So having that quarterback depth is incredibly important. That's why I am so sure that this competition was real. Because Summerall and Faulkner needed to know that Tramell Jones was ready to step in if they needed him to. And Tramell's going to play in those first two games against FAU and against Campbell. Tramell's going to see the field. When we get to week 3 against Auburn, that's when we'll really know for Florida who their true QB1 is. I still expect it'll be Philo. I don't believe over those first two games, Tramell's going to come in, take that job, and run with it. But Tramell has to be ready, and Tramell knows that. And to Jones' credit, by the way, it's been clear for years how good of a kid this guy is. Just his pride in the Florida logo, through the Billy Napier time, sitting behind DJ Lagway, and then after this quarterback battle, I don't have the exact quote ahead of me, but it was, he was disappointed, but then it was head down, right back to work. Like, he has that attitude. He's not going to quit. And in terms of the bond that Philo and Tramell have, man, normally when quarterbacks are made available to the media, the first quarterback will go, and then when he's done, he'll just leave, right? He'll go get treatment, he'll go to the film room, whatever he has to do. Philo sat there and stayed through Tramell's segment too. Like, the bond that these two have is very strong. And there were Florida fans trying to push a narrative that Summerall lost the locker room by picking Philo over Tramell. That's not true, because Philo didn't even lose Tramell over him being picked. So no, I do not believe that the locker room is split over this quarterback decision. Do each of the guys have their own opinions? Sure. Do some of them probably think that Tramell would have been a better pick? For sure. But they also know that Philo can get it done. Right? I mean, these college football teams, they're not like Colts, right? It's not like high school where if you're, you side with the leader of your friend group and that's the end-all be-all. That's not what this is. These are effectively grown adults making millions of dollars. There's more maturity in there than that. There is. So for the Florida Gators this year, man, I didn't have a super. I thought it would be Philo just because of the structural advantage, but I don't have a super high lean on which quarterback I think could be better. Right, I think long-term, Tramell probably has a higher ceiling and a better career ahead of him than Aaron Philo does. When it comes to the instance of this season for the Florida Gators, I think Aaron Philo, at least starting off with, makes a ton of sense because of what's going to be asked of that quarterback spot. It's not going to be asked that he can play hero ball, that he can do everything on his own. Just make the right decisions, make the right reads, make the right checks. That 100 times out of 100 goes to the guy who is used to that OC. And when Faison Branton and Keelan Russell got named starting quarterbacks too at Bama and Tennessee, you saw some Florida fans saying, oh, I guess that, familiarity doesn't matter, when it comes to the coordinators, head coaches, all that, experience in the scheme doesn't actually matter, so why did Philo get the job? Well, Tramell Jones is not Faison Branton. And Tramell Jones isn't Keelan Russell. Right? Those two guys are transcendent talents. Tramell, I don't think, is that. So that's an unfair example as well when it comes to people who are anti-Aaron Philo getting this job. Yeah, sure. Keelan and Faison got those jobs even though they had less experience than their counterparts. They're also 5-star generational talents. Tramell Jones isn't that right now. He's not. So when I look at this quarterback one job for Florida, I think Aaron Philo was the correct pick. I think he makes sense, but it wouldn't shock me at all either if Tramell Jones gets some good bit of run in the season and he looks really good. And it's going to be inevitable too. The first bad ball that Philo throws, whether it's just like an overthrown third down or it takes a bad sack, throws a pick, noise is going to get real loud on Twitter about Tramell Jones being the better guy. But both these quarterbacks would make mistakes, and they'll both make, hopefully down the season this year, really good throws as well and really good plays. So we'll see how it plays out. John Summerall and Buster Faulkner know better than everybody who is talking about this outside of the program. I also believe that Philo is a good pick because of his familiarity with that offense and what he's going to be expected to do. So thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Tailgate Talk SEC. If you have been enjoying all this college football content and you want even more day after day throughout the entire football season, subscribe to me on YouTube at Tailgate Talk SEC. Follow me on podcasts if you're listening on audio there. Twitter at Will Thomas CFB. Let's have some fun, man. I've been Will Thomas, and I'll see you next time.